Big day today. We're going to take this car and we're going to give it some serious audio upgrades. First thing we're doing is adding Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with a kit from Mr12Volt.com. And the second thing we're doing is upgrading the standard PCM 3.0 hard drive to an SSD. And that will keep this hard drive ticking along a lot longer than Porsche intended with its magnetic spinning drive. So let's see what the kit looks like. Here are the components that we're planning to use. This is a Transcend. This is an automotive grade hard drive. It's quite pricey. A lot of people, when they do an SSD upgrade on their head units, they would use a standard MSATA hard drive with an adapter that converts it to PATA. We've just gone for a PATA hard drive. There's the model number there, and of course I will post all of these details in the description. But this is a fit for purpose, dedicated, parallel ATA 2.5-inch hard drive, which obviously comes with a decent warranty and is widely available worldwide. So we're going to use this one. And then of course this is the kit. There's the details there. This is a CarPlay kit and Android Auto for the Porsche PCM 3 made by Mr12Volt. This is actually the newer version of the kit, which comes with a built-in 15-channel equalizer. We're not going to be using the equalizer per se on this install, but there it is. There's the base box wrapped in plastic. If we take that out, you can see the connectors on it. So obviously the middle one is the MOS bus, the end one is the connector that goes into the head unit. There's a microphone input here. This is because we can't, except we can, but we can't use the internal PCM microphone for CarPlay or Android Auto. It needs to be a separate microphone. There are various reasons for that. However, somebody has found a hack, and that's what we plan to implement in a future video. And then over here you've got this multi-port connector, multi-pin connector even, and this is to connect the power and data to the rest of the car. Over on the other side you've got simple things like a reset button, a micro SD slot. That's to be used for any firmware upgrades, and obviously we'll do a firmware upgrade on this as soon as we've got it powered up so that it is bang up to date and is going to work perfectly. Okay, so that's the main unit. It comes with dip switches which are to be configured a certain way. It's pre-configured out of the box. Putting that aside, you also get open. So this is a board that we need to install inside of the PCM itself. This is a video board, pretty generic item, but obviously it comes as part of this kit. So we'll be using this, so we'll be taking the PCM out of the car, we'll be installing this board, we'll also at the same time install the SSD, and I'll walk through the steps for that, but we'll put this board in, and then that will enable the connectivity via a cable out of the PCM and into this box here. This is a MOS bus T-piece, so this takes one MOS bus socket and gives you two outputs so that we can disconnect the PCM and then reconnects the PCM to this harness, as well as our new blue box. So the Mr12Volt CarPlay and Android Auto adapter communicates via MOS bus for the best sound quality. Also included is obviously the separate microphone that I spoke about earlier. So we'll use this as a temporary measure. However, we will be later implementing a hack that will allow the standard PCM mic to be used, so we don't actually need this in future. And then we've got some cables. So we'll start with this one. This is the cable that connects the board inside the PCM to this unit here. So that is a fairly bespoke cable. You've also got a standard Porsche spec, although I think other manufacturers use this harness type as well. But this is the harness extension, and this has got all the tap-offs we need to liven up the Mr12Volt Android Auto and CarPlay unit. So you can see there's the multi-port connector there in white. So obviously this will just sit in between the PCM and the car's factory car harness, and we will obviously have to move the Mosbus connector from the current harness plug it's in into this plug so that continues to communicate. You've also got a number of these connectors here, and you can see that they are rear cam input and reverse light 12 volts. So this basically, if we want to use a reversing camera, we can interface these cables into the car harness and we can use a reversing camera. That camera input will be triggered by applying 12 volts to this cable, and whatever camera is connected to the end of this lead will then provide a picture on the screen with line markings, etc. We're not going to be doing that today. I don't have a reversing camera yet. Maybe we'll pick that up in another video at another time. But for now, this is about getting CarPlay going because I use an iPhone. So yeah, multiple camera inputs. There are various signal inputs there as well. Now, crucially, USB. This allows the connection of a USB stick. Now, the standard PCM 3 also allows connection of a USB stick. So why this, you might ask? Well, this plays all manner of newer file formats that the stock, must be now 13-year-old PCM 3.0 will not play. So I'm going to run this USB into the glove box, and we're going to try running some FLAC files, some AIF files, and some other interesting formats that we know the PCM 3 can't play, and we'll see how it sounds compared to the factory PCM. Alright, enough about me talking. Let's go and pull the PCM out and get to work. Now we're in the car, and there's the PCM 3.0 ready to come out. But in order to get this out, we first of all have to remove these two panels here, 1 and 2. To get these off, you need a couple of Torx heads, a T30, to remove the carpet trim panel, which is down the side there, and there's another one down the side there. I've already pulled those off. And then, so that's just a single screw either side, and then you need a T15 to remove 2 screws on this side that secure this panel in, and 2 screws that secure this panel in. So I've taken those out as well. So the last step is to remove these 2 side sections, which you can do by getting behind it and giving it a good forward pull, and that comes away. It's actually held in, as you can see here, by 3 clips. There's 1, 2 and 3, and the same applies on this side here. Once we've undone those screws, we can give it a good firm. This one's not so easy. No, can't do that one. I'm going to try that again in a second. Once this has been pulled off, it does reveal some further clips in the side of the head unit, which you can see here. Once those are pressed in, then it is possible to remove the head unit and just slide it forward by pressing in the 4 clips. There's one up there, there's one down here, and then once I get this side panel off, there's another couple there. So after a bit more pulling, I managed to get both side panels off, And the next step is now to release the PCM and slide it out forwards. So, as I was saying, there are release clips here. So we've got to just get into this here and push that in. This can be unlocked with a hex bolt that's just above it. Just there, that's I believe it's a 6mm hex bolt, which needs pulling out, well not pulling out, sorry, it needs rotating counterclockwise, and then that will slide forwards. And there's another one just up there as well. So we'll undo those and then we'll slide this PCM 3 unit forwards. Okay, so you can see we've now liberated the head unit. It's starting to slide forward. Now, extra bit of caution, you've got lots and lots of delicate fabrics here, be they leather or Alcantara or anything else. These things scratch very easily, so protect that. We're going to put a towel or a sweatshirt or something down and just cover those delicate areas, so that in case the back corner, the metalwork of the PCM, catches these things, you know, including the gear lever, we can put a sleeve over the gear lever just to protect that, like so. That way when we pull out the PCM and we're holding it in one hand, we're unplugging the connectors with the other. There's no risk of anything catching and nicking the leather, because, you know, that would be a horrible thing. Similarly up here, you know, if you've got painted surfaces, etc., just be extra careful when you pull this out. It is heavy, and you don't want to rush this process at all. So take your time, ease it out gently, like so. So this is coming out very, very slowly indeed. And just a little bit of left and right, and we want to get it as it comes out. I think we're getting to the back of it now. I see the sort of depth it has. So I'm just going to pause the video and pull this out, and I'll show you the back of it. So here you can see we've pulled the PCM out, and you can see at the back there is a plethora of connectors. We're going to unplug all of those so we can take the PCM, put it on the bench, and then take it apart. Alright, so that's my next move, is to pull out all these connectors. Be very, very careful with the orange one there. That is the Mostbus fibre optic. It is plastic, but it obviously is still delicate. It transmits light. All the rest are just copper. Okay, now we've got the PCM out. We've unplugged all the cables. Fortunately, they're all colour coded, so don't worry about remembering which one goes where. They've all got specific shapes as well, so you can't really mess them up. Coming back to this one, this is the main quad lock connector. You can see the fibre optic bus connector is right there. We're going to actually, when we get to the implementation, we're going to be pulling this fibre optic out of this quad lock. We're going to be attaching the new Mr12Volt harness onto this, and then reattaching this fibre optic via the T-piece into the new connector. More on that later, but right now we've got the PCM out of the car. It's in my lap here, and now we're going to get to work with the hard drive upgrade. So here's our Transcend SSD, fully cloned, and this is following the instructions I mentioned earlier, which I will send a link to, and it's now been reattached to the metal caddy by the 4 screws, and that is now ready to go back into the chassis. And the drive unit is firmly back in. We use the same torque screws in the same locations from whence they came. And we just tighten these up very quickly. next thing we're going to do is pop the PCM open. So I've turned the PCM the right way up. So you see the back of it looks like that now. We obviously had it upside down in order to install the hard drive. The hard drive's now in. So we're now going to open up the casing and look inside the PCM. So we're going to get our Torx bit, pop it back in here, and undo these Torx screws just here. So this next bit, opening up the PCM, is not easy. So what we've done is we've taken out a screw here. This is at the top. And another screw here. There are 2 screws at the back which we've taken out, one here and one here. So these are the Torx screws here. They're all the same, by the way. All these Torx screws are all identical. So 2 from the top, 2 from the back, there and there, and 2 from the bottom side, which I've put on the outer edges here. So this is so that we can first of all push, and you can probably see here I've had to push the front panel away from the main unit. That goes all the way around here, and that's so that we can then cantilever this top section away from this bottom section. So there's a hinge at the back here, there and there, and this whole top section, the CD unit, essentially then tips upward this way, like that, and obviously we need to get some leverage in here first in order to make that happen. But first step is to undo those screws, move away the front panel, and there's nothing actually in there. You can probably sort of see the towel beneath, but it's pretty clear all the way through. There's just cables linking the panel to the brain in the lower unit. And obviously the lower unit is where the quad lock is and the fan is, and all of the connectors are as well. So the top unit is just the CD unit, and the bottom unit is the main PCM brain, and our next step is just to lever off this top section backwards. Okay, bingo. So we've managed to lever off, as I said, the top, the CD unit or the DVD unit. That's now leaning backwards, and it took a little bit of pulling, so I didn't want to hold the camera and pull at the same time for fear of breaking something. But you can see it does in fact lever up. There's a seal here that breaks. So this is an anti-tamper seal, but that's fine. This is an old car, it's an old unit, and we're not worried about warranty. So they tell you that actually when you buy the kit. Now, there's another interesting detail. Just over here, there's another screw hole. I've actually taken this panel off that position, and it was held in by a single Torx screw. And the reason for that is because we're going to need this opening for the new board that's going in. So you can see all the existing boards have got their connectors in these various places. The new board that we're putting in that will connect to the CarPlay and Android Auto box will go inside here, and then there'll be a cable outlet here that then runs into that particular box. So that's why we need to open that cover and expose this space so that the new connector can present itself to the rear of the PCM. Alright, let's have a quick look inside. Okay, so the drive unit, I've spun the unit around 90 degrees. I've moved the drive unit off 180 degrees so we can now see inside the main PCM. So this unit here is just the DVD drive. It connects via this ribbon cable into the main board. This here looks like the principal board. There's a fan there to exhaust hot air into the rest of the car. We've got obviously a number of ribbon cables, and you can see the outlet just there that we've uncovered for our new board. So next step for us here is to get the new video board and to install that onto or into the PCM. At the moment the front panel is loose, it's not affixed to the main PCM at all, but it is obviously supported on my work surface. So we'll get to work on the board, we'll connect the ribbon cables as instructed by the manufacturer, and then we'll come back. So I've now disconnected the first ribbon cable, which is to the DVD player, and we've disconnected it from this clip location here. The way to do that, incidentally, is by lifting up the tabs on either side of this clip. So just stick a fingernail underneath and lift vertically, and then the cable will just slide out very, very easily. The reinsertion process is to slide the cable in first and then push the clips down evenly. Anyway, we'll come to that later. So at the moment the DVD drive is disconnected and free, so we can move this away and put this on one side, and we'll come back to that later. For now, we just want to work on getting the board out. So here is the board that came from Mr12Volt. So we're going to slide this out and we're going to pop it inside there. First things first, there are ribbon cables involved, so we're going to have to daisy chain those ribbon cables, and then once we've obviously daisy chain the ribbon cables through the board, so you can see there are identical connectors here so that we can do that. The board will sit in line effectively with the display, and then there's also power to be applied here, and there's the physical mounting of this board inside this chassis over here. So without further ado, let's get this out of its anti-static bag, and let's unplug the rest of these cables, ribbon cables in here that now need to connect onto this particular board, and let's get it all plugged up and ready for operation. Right, so I'm now putting in this brass upstand into one of the existing screw holes. There was a Torx T8 screw in there already, which I've pulled out, and we're putting this brass upstand in its place. This is so that the board has got a stable platform to sit on. So once I get that in, obviously I've had to remove these two cables out of the way first to reveal that screw hole, or to reveal the screw that was in the screw hole. Remove it and then insert this. I'm going to do that up by hand, and then we're going to start inserting the new ribbons into these two ports here, so the short one and the slightly longer one there. This one, the third one along, is for the DVD drive. We're going to leave that one alone and reinsert the DVD drive once we're finished. So at the moment we're just working with the ribbon cables that came with the kit, and we're going to be fitting those into these two slots once we've put in this brass upstand there. Now we've got the board in hand. You can see the three holes, two at the top there, and there's one at the bottom there. Those are the ones we're going to use to secure this board into this chassis. So now the two ribbon cables that were supplied with the kit are installed. So just use the orientation so the blue side faces away from the screen, and so the conductor side, I mean they're identical each end, so it doesn't matter which way you put them in, but you just got to make sure that you face the connectors towards the front of the head unit, and the blue insulator side towards the back, exactly the same as the existing ribbon cables that are already part of the screen. So you can see that the two cables are in, the upstand is in, so the next step is to introduce the board. Alright, so the board is in. It's securely fastened by these three new torque screws. You can just see the third one over there. I've also inserted the display cable into those ports. It tells you quite usefully to connect those two ports to the display and these two ports to the motherboard. So those are the original cables that came with the PCM. They're coming from the screen and they connect to those two ports on the board. We've now got these two new cables over here that we're going to connect into the corresponding ports here and here onto the board. And there we have it, all four cables neatly seated onto the TV board. So let's see what's next. I think we're going to add a connector here, fix it to the board and have it pop through there. So here is the cable we're going to use. It's quite long, so we're going to feed this end through this opening here, like so, and we'll just navigate it around one of the existing cables like so. So as you can see here, we've now connected this cable, which is the display cable coming in from the Android Auto CarPlay unit. It enters the back of the PCM here and it connects onto the board here. Just note the orientation of the connector. It's so that the black and blue cables are on this left side if you're looking from the back, and the white cable is on the right if you're looking from the back as well. Alright, so just get that orientation around the right way. It's a little bit fiddly to install, only because this here keeps getting snagged on this metal here, and also this entry point here, so it's a bit of a fiddly process, but perseverance, patience is the key. Mr12Volt recommends that you put a cable tie through, and there are a couple of holes in the board for that cable tie to get through. I had to bend the tip of my cable tie just to get it to loop round underneath the board and round the cable, and obviously I've snipped off any excess cable tie so it's not in there, you know, potentially fouling airways or anything else. So we've cut that off. Cable ties in situ, it's nice and tight. The intent is to stop any pulling on this lead here outside of the unit to cause this to become disconnected, because otherwise that will lose our connectivity. Alright, so the very next thing to do now is to get the last ribbon cable, which goes down there. You can just about see the connector on the main board there. Last ribbon cable there, that is the one that connects the DVD drive. We're going to put that back on top and we're going to bolt this back together and put all the screws back in. So with the firmware updated on here, now it's time to turn our attention to this. Now, I wasn't expecting to do this just now, but let's give it a go. So by this, what I mean is opening up the wiring harness and doing the microphone hack. The microphone hack is so that we don't use the Mr12Volt supplied microphone. Instead, we use the factory mic, which is already in the car. That means that the interior of the car is much more stock, and we don't need to then run an additional mic into the vehicle and make the cabin look unsightly. So to do that, we need to buy a cable, which I've shown you earlier in the video. It's just a simple 3.5mm headphone jack, a TRS configuration, so essentially 3 connectors, a tip, a ring and a stub. And that then terminates, well, at the moment it's just open to bare wires. I've bought a 1 meter long cable and we'll be soldering that into the harness. Now before you get all scared about soldering, you know, you don't have to solder. There are other ways of attaching the cable if you don't feel comfortable soldering or don't have anyone that can do this for you. But anyway, either way, I need to show you where it needs to connect into. So looking at this end of the connector. This is actually the bit that goes into the back of the PCM once we're done. It's this white sub-connector here that we now need to take out, and there are 3 cables identified in here, which are the top right, as we're looking at it from this side. It's the 3rd one along at the top from the right, so it's counting the first one as 1, 2, 3, and then it's the one directly below it as well. So those are the 3 cables that we need to take out of this plug. We'll do that by pulling, you can just see the clip there at the top of the white plug. We're going to squeeze that clip, and then this plug will simply slide out of this larger quad lock plug. Once that's out, then we will use a screwdriver, a very thin screwdriver, to ease these pins out of the overall plug. And inside here there are the metal pins appear, and they're connected obviously to these wires at the back. We'll see that shortly. And then once we've got our metal pins, we'll be able to solder our new cable directly to them, reinsert them into the white plug, reinsert the white plug back into the overall plug, and then we're ready to integrate this and the PCM back into the car. So this is literally the last step before we reassemble everything in the car and test it all out. So you can see here I've just squeezed that tab here at the top, and that's unlatched this white connector out of the main plug. It's left a nice hole there. It's pretty painless to do. Now the next step is actually to remove the black plug from within the white plug. The white plug is just a glorified enclosure, and to do that we slide the white piece off. Try doing it like this, one-handed. Not the easiest thing to do with a single hand, but you can essentially see from here that this will slide that way, leaving the black connector to be exposed. There is a little retaining clip just here at the top, so that needs to be lifted up before the black connector will slide out, but now that's been squeezed, this will now slide straight off. And we do need to recognize which way is up and which way is down. So there is a groove along here, just sliding my thumbnail into it. So that groove tees up with the lower groove there, and so that identifies the bottom of this particular plug. There is a groove at the top as well, but it's not as deep. So yeah, just make sure your orientation is clear, otherwise you will unplug the wrong thing. To check, what you can do is use a multimeter and just attach it to the pins that I mentioned here. So looking on this side, it's the top left, it's also then the 3rd one along from the left at the top, and it's the bottom 1/3 one along as well. So we can put a meter on those here and see that we're getting a signal over here to validate that those are the right 3 connectors that we are pulling out. So to pull our pins out of this black plug, we simply need to get a small screwdriver, press down on the metal pins there, while simultaneously pulling the orange cable out of the back of the plug, and then that will come apart. We'll then see that pin exposed, and we'll have a surface on that to solder our headphone jack connector cable onto. So we've managed to now get the headphone jack cable soldered in line. So thanks to my good friend Paris at Hitbit Security. Very, very helpful. So he's managed to splice in, solder in the headphone jack cable, which is here, and run that into the 3 points that I'd mentioned before. I'll post the details of that in the comments. And so we've got a completed microphone hack harness. So the next step from now is to go back to the car, and we're going to do 3 things. First off, we're going to test the PCM. Just plug that into the original harness, see that it works okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is introduce the Mosbus Y connector. So that will then allow for 2 things to be connected rather than just the PCM alone. So we'll be able to connect the other device, being the Mr12Volt box, which is this one over here. So obviously this needs a Mosbus connection, as shown on the back there, the black connector there. And then we are going to connect this harness into the car, connect everything up using that harness, and then we'll do some testing. This is the Mosbus harness, the Y adapter that's supplied with the kit. I've just untied the cable ties, and what you can see, I'll stretch this out, is you've got 2 connectors very close together, one male, one female, and you've got another male connector which is on a much longer extension. So the way this is going to work is the bit that's furthest away from the 2 is going to go into the blue box. The one that is female is going to receive the incoming plug from the car, and it's the 3rd connector, the male connector that is closest to the female connector, that we are now going to take the outer plug off and just leave the inner plug. So this particular outer plug is going to be attached to the car's harness when we take it out of the quad lock, and then this inner plug is going to be inserted into the quad lock. And what that will do then is it will have the effect of creating a Y connection. So we'll be able to still connect one more device in line with the Mosbus ring. So let's take off this outer connector first. There's only one way it pops off, and it is a directional connection. So we'll just squeeze the side of the connector and slide out the inner plug from the back of this particular connector here. So that outer plug has now just slid off. It's just pulling a side clip slightly to the side, and then the inner plug just slides off. So what we're going to do now is do the exact same operation with the one that's in the car's harness. So we're going to put this in place of the one that's in the car's harness currently, and we're going to slide this one that we've just taken off here, and we're going to slide that onto the car's harness. Once we've done that, we're going to plug that complete assembly into this female connector here, like so. Right, we're back in the car, and I've just taken out the inner connector from the back of this quad lock. It was over here on this left-hand side, and so now I'm going to insert our Y connections internal connector in its place, and then the car cable is going to slide into here. I've just pre-clipped the outer connector into the female connector, so that's ready to go straight in there. So once we've done that, then that's the fibre optic cabling complete, and we're ready to then install the Mr12Volt harness onto the end of this connector here. Sorry, correction. What we're not going to do is we're not going to reinsert the new cable here, because this is actually going into the back of the Mr12Volt harness. So we're actually going to insert the new fibre optic into the back of this harness. So essentially it will appear there, because this is the connector that's going into the back of the head unit. So that's where we need the fibre optic to present. So it's test fit time. So we've got the PCM over here, the P2000 Mr12Volt CarPlay interface over here, and what we've done is we've connected up the Mr12Volt harness into the factory harness in the car. That then feeds into the back of the PCM 3. We've got our LVDS cable coming out here from the back of the unit, and that goes into this connector, which then goes into this harness in the P2000 unit here. We've got our microphone hack, which is a standard 3.5mm headphone jack cable, which has been soldered in to our main Mr12Volt harness down here. So that means the factory mic will be used rather than the aftermarket mic that's included with this particular interface. We've got this other display cable connected, and that runs off into the harness over here, and that goes back into the PCB that we installed before. So that's connected. We've got the MOS bus Y cable connected now. So this is the Y cable end that is the long tail of the Y that feeds into that. The short ends of the Y are here and into the back of the Mr12Volt harness there. So that essentially splits the fibre optic signal so that there's another node for this unit itself. Alright, so that is how the topology works, and if we were able to swivel it round, and we can switch it on, and we can see that that comes up okay. We've got sound, it's coming up with navigation. Compress maps, it comes up with a map. Obviously it's hissing because none of the antennas are connected, but fundamentally that works. And if I were to press the source button down here, then we've got the option of TV. So when we press TV, we're into CarPlay, because I've already prepared my phone with the harness. So that completes our test fit. We've proved that it's working. I've paired this phone, the one I'm recording on, with the device, so it can now use all of the CarPlay functions via the screen. And yeah, essentially we've proven that the project has been successful. So what we're now going to do is to put everything back together again. So the Mr12Volt, the little blue box, is going to go at the back of the dash and probably down at the bottom, near the bottom of the footwell, underneath the vents, and that will allow the head unit to go back into the slot. The USB cable is going to be fed through the side and back of the glove box so that it appears inside the glove box, and that way we can connect a USB stick in there if we want to, and if we don't, then obviously we've got the integral USB and iPod harness in the central console in here. Alright, so next steps, put it all back together. We're back in the car, everything is finally back together, and you can see CarPlay in operation on a PCM 3, which is quite a sight to see given how antiquated the rest of PCM 3 looks. So we've fed the USB cable into the glove box here, and it's got my memory stick on it, there, so I've got lots of my music available on that. That's also useful for things like firmware updates, so there's no need to go down to the actual box, which is now at the back of the dash. It's actually right at the floor of the boot where it meets the firewall. So yeah, the furthest extent at the back. I don't know if it's visible. If I sort of peek down there, you can maybe see a flash of blue just there, but it's just there behind the carpet. So everything's put away, everything's now neat and tidy, and yeah, it works a treat. Response time is pretty good. We can scroll like this, we can hop between recently played and search and library, and all of that is all pretty quick. Flip over to Waze, or we can go to a split layout like that, or we can go straight into lots and lots of different apps. We've got the ability by pressing the Mr12Volt app. It's not actually an app, this just takes you to the home screen where you can control the USB stick, and if you go home here, then this is where you would set up your P2000. So you'd pair your phone here. I'll just show you that here. So there's a Bluetooth menu where you would go and pair your phone, and then you could, once you've paired it there, you can go into CarPlay, and then you'd see obviously your CarPlay menu come up. So said it's not you know, comparable to the latest systems, which use a capacitive touchscreen and have much faster processors and a very smooth motion, much higher resolution graphics. But as you know, a means to bring a 12-13-year-old head unit bang up to date, this product is absolutely on point. It does exactly what it's meant to do. The nice thing is because it's woven into the PCM 3 via the board, things like if you were listening to Spotify, as I often listening to Spotify as I often do, then you know, things like using the inbuilt buttons. I can't do it here on this video because every time I press a button it freezes my video recording because this is the phone that's paired. But take my word for it, you know, these buttons work. And you know, obviously if you've got steering wheel controls, then the equivalent buttons on the steering wheel would also work. You know, from a source perspective, you know, you would, from a sound perspective, you can obviously set up any preferences you have here. Obviously the P2000 emulates a TV tuner, so as far as PCM is concerned, you're running a TV source, and on here obviously it shows a TV source. So I hope that has given you confidence to install your own P2000 or other similar device, but also to clone your hard drive, which is the other thing that we did here. We swapped out the spinning hard drive with an SSD, and what that's meant is that the PCM is now completely silent and allows you to enjoy your music that little bit more. Thanks for watching, and good luck.